Hi, friends. Rebecca Barnes, Prince William Living Magazine, and we are here today with Jason Hickman of Compton and Duling to talk a little bit about business in our community. Hey, Jason, say hi to our friends.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing today?
So, Jason, tell us a little bit about Compton Duling for those that aren't familiar with your firm.
Compton and Duling is a law firm. It's been in the community, a part of the community for the past 52 years. Lacey Compton started it originally he was with his father and his brother, then he moved to Woodbridge and started the firm. It's been able to survive the last 52 years because of the adaptions and flexibility of the firm, increasing practice areas, modifying practice areas, and generally just being able to address the changing landscape in the community.
So I know part of Compton and Duling's way that they do business is getting very vested in the community, including community service. And each lawyer that's with the firm takes on a volunteer capacity in some group. Can you tell us real quick the groups that you're involved with?
Sure. In addition to billable hour requirements, we have community service requirements. And the community service organizations that I'm involved with, I'm currently the president of CASA, which is court-appointed special advocates for abused and neglected children. I'm involved with the Boys and Girls Club. I'm involved with Lake Ridge Rotary, and I'm on the executive board for the Hilton Performing Arts Center, just to name a few of the organizations.
So I like that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, interaction with the community and getting to know your community is important as you serve the community, whether it's a legal service or what education, whatever the service is to the community, you should be involved in the community.
I think it says a lot about a firm when make it part of their mission to give back in ways other than just service or money. It's actually getting in there and doing things in the community. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah. Let's talk about what you specifically do, because you have several attorneys there and they each handle a different part of the business. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
My practice area is generally focused on business representation and real estate representation. The business representation involves everything from starting a business to selling a business, everything that happens in between. Real estate, a lot of the businesses that we represent also have real estate issues, whether it's buying real estate, selling real estate, developing real estate. There's a lot of land use and land transactions that are related to the businesses that I represent.
Okay, so if you have a business in Prince William, Manassas, or Manassas Park, and you're dealing with contracts, you're dealing with maybe contracts for your services, contract for services from others, what are some of the pitfalls that can happen to people when they're signing contracts, but they're not having them reviewed?
It's interesting. In our everyday life, everybody has a contract that they've signed at one time or another, whether it's to buy a car or to buy a house. And usually when we're signing those documents, we don't look at them. And that puts you at a distinct disadvantage. An attorney has drafted those documents, and those documents are meant to protect the companies that are utilizing those documents. Well, the same is true in business. Whether you're looking at a lease, whether you're a landlord drafting a lease, a tenant signing a lease, a business doing an equipment lease, a individual doing any type of service agreement, contracts are part of your life. And it's an everyday part, whether it's banking related, whether it's business related, however it is. And what's important is, especially now, many businesses are realizing this with the COVID-19 that's happening. They didn't look at their contracts and they didn't understand their contracts where, okay, my business is forced to close because of an executive order from the governor, but what do I do? Am I still obligated to pay rent? Do I still have to pay my employees? And part of what we do is offer assistance and guidance and try to walk through the path or down the path with the clients so that they understand what their potential liabilities are in the future. And if they're faced with a situation like the crisis that we're facing now, understanding what the documents they have say, what they mean, and what they can do in response to those documents. Understanding what a force majeure clause is not something that most people in everyday life understand. But in today's marketplace, it's important because it's a provision in a contract that says you're not obligated to perform because you can't perform because of circumstances beyond your control, an act of God. Now, those are great, except most landlords have put in force majeure exceptions, and those exceptions are rent is absolute, meaning that you have to pay the rent no matter what happens. So even in a COVID-19 crisis, you're still obligated to pay the rent if there's an exception. And that's where an attorney can come in, review the document, and even if they don't modify the document for you, they can change the document so you have managed expectations about what is going to happen to you.
Well, and I would think having an attorney review it would allow you to make plans. So possibly you need a type of insurance or gap insurance, or you need to set aside reserves, something. At least gives you the power of the knowledge of what you're getting into or what you're already in. Now, flip that around as the business owner and you're doing business with other people. Let's say you've taken deposits. If you don't have an attorney review a contract, that could become a sticking point as well, correct? Because do you return the deposits? Can you keep the deposits? Do you credit the client? And how does that work with your own contract? I'm sure you've seen that.
Exactly. What ends up happening is there are provisions in contracts that when you're writing them, they're not important. They're important when something happens like what is happening now. And you have to decide, do I give that deposit back? Do I terminate the lease? What ends up happening with my contracts? It goes so far as to with employment. Some employees have contracts, many or most are at will. What do I do with the employees? Am I allowed to terminate them? Do I furlough them? Do I lay them off? How do I deal with that situation? So there are all kinds of business relationships that attorneys can assist you with on a day-to-day basis. Most attorneys are there to be both offensive and defensive. They can be proactive and help you as far as making sure you avoid problems. And if you're in the unfortunate circumstance where you have an issue that's confronting you now, attorneys are meant to be there to be able to assist you, help you navigate through the problems with the ability to understand what your options are, what your expectations should be under the circumstances.
So it sounds like it's one of those cost of doing business things. I know a lot of people think they can't afford an attorney, but you wouldn't say that about insurance. So just look at it like it's another insurance of sorts. It's assurance, that you've got all your bases covered, because none of us think that the plague is going to hit and then the plague hits, or we've had storms, and we've had trees crashing through businesses, and anything can happen, and just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't happen. So I think getting a good attorney to look things over to make sure that you're prepared is the best course of action.
What I tell people all the time is, would you rather spend $500, $1,000 to have an attorney review some documents, or would you prefer to spend $25,000 or $50,000 litigating the issues because, oh, guess what, I forgot to deal with that when I wrote that particular contract, or I didn't address it when I was doing that contract? And
if you have a contract in place, but you're the business owner, you do have the flexibility of so if your contract says that you get to keep the deposit, that doesn't mean you have to keep the deposit. If the customer service says we're going to go ahead and give back deposits, or we're going to reschedule people, then that's your prerogative, but at least you know where you stand and what your rights are once you've set it up, and if you need to make changes to your contract. So now is the perfect time for people to get their documents reviewed, because then they know where they are and what changes they maybe need to make for the future. Yes.
Yeah, you've ran stories recently about things that landlords in Old Town Manassas have done to modify the lease terms. And those are great things for the community. It's a great thing to be able to do that as a landlord, and it's great to be the recipient of it as a tenant. What you should do, though, is document those things in writing so that everybody is clear, and so that 3 years from now, when someone says, well, remember when you didn't pay rent for 3 months, I want that 3 months rent now. What you don't want to do is get into that situation. So you want to make sure you're documenting things now as opposed to dealing with them later, where it can be much more costly than just 3 months rent or whatever it ends up being. If you document it now, when everybody is on the same page, it helps, it makes things easier, and it's much less costly in the long run.
So would that be like an addendum or a memorandum of understanding, something where if I'm the landlord and I'm saying, I'm going to defer your payments, and here's the terms that I'm going to defer your payments, please sign this to acknowledge. And you'd have that run by an attorney to make sure that it's what you want it to say.
Absolutely. So, you have to understand the terminology that is being used. Is it rent abatement, meaning I'm not ever going to have to pay it? Or is it rent deferral, meaning that in 6 months I'm going to have to pay it back, but right now I don't have to pay it? It's a very different circumstance, and you have to manage how you're going to repay it if you are repaying it back. If you're the landlord and you're saying I'm going to abate it and you don't have to pay it back at all, then you want that in writing as well, just to protect everybody's interest in the long run.
And that makes perfect sense. So if someone is interested in finding out more information, how can they get a hold of you?
There's a number of different ways you can reach me. You can go to our website, which is www.comptonduling.com, and you can reach us there. You can also reach me via my direct line at the office, which is 703-565-5137. If I'm not in the office, that will ring through to my cell phone, so you'll be able to reach me anytime. You can also email me at jeh@comptonduling.com, and I would be more than happy to speak with you, talk to you, work with you on any issues or problems that you're facing.
Excellent. Well, we'll be sure to put that in the link below so that it will be there when people want to get more information. We appreciate you joining us today. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I appreciate all that you do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Thanks.